Back when I was in college, I used to do the thing that most early 20-somethings like to do. Party. Like, a lot. Pretty much every weekend or week off from class. I was always at a party somewhere in the nearby town. Yes, it was a very dumb way to live, but I was all about having a good time and trying to get the most out of life that I could. I've definitely gotten past this part of my life, and the story is actually part of the reason that I stopped partying. Mostly because it kind of messed me up mentally. This party that I was going to was pretty much like every other party I've ever gone to. Too many people, people planning on drinking too much and crashing on the host's floor. Probably some illegal activities occurring that I won't mention, because I'm not going to incriminate anyone. I actually knew the host, but I wasn't really friends with him. I guess that I would say that we were sort of acquaintances. When I say host, though, it's probably important to note that I just mean the person that rents or owns the house that we are going to have the party in. Because there were always a group of us crazy kids that would supply the party with all it needed. We just needed someone to give us 4 walls, some furniture, and a stereo. When I got to the house on the night of the party, it looked like it was going to be one hell of a time. A bunch of my friends were already there, the music was decent, and I was ready to let loose and have a good time. I walked in, and just inside the door, I immediately ran into the host. We're gonna call him Robin for the story. And I went in for a handshake to thank him for letting us use his house, and to tell him how awesome he was. I started off with a, "Hey bro, how's it going?" Just trying to keep it informal, and he literally just stood there staring at me with a blank stare. After a few moments of me reaching my hand out and him just staring at me like there was something on my face, several moments that were incredibly awkward, I may add, I just sort of readjusted and then asked if he was okay. He kept that same dead stare and just shook his head slightly, saying, "No, Cody, I'm not okay." Then he turned to walk away from me without as much as a second stare. I was pretty obviously confused. This was an incredibly strange interaction that I definitely did not anticipate from Robin. The few times we met, he always seemed pretty chill, and I thought we were decent with each other to the point that he would accept my conversation, but here we were. I shrugged it off and just went back to the table to get something to eat and to get myself a second drink. I figured maybe he was just in a bad mood or something, and I wasn't wanting to let it ruin my night. After a while, I was just having a good time at the party, chatting it up with people that I knew. I actually asked a few others if they had spoken to Robin or seen him that night. Everyone else mentioned that he gave them that same cold shoulder, but they said that they just assumed he was having second thoughts about hosting the party. I agreed that that was probably the case, but the other side of that is that he could have just not agreed to have been the host. In the end, I assumed that this was just going to be one of those parties where the host complained a lot after, and no one was allowed to crash on the floor. We'd had a few Killjoy hosts before, and it was fine. It was his house after all, but it was still kind of a pain. Well, I thought that this was the case, until what happened actually happened. And this was about 2 hours into the whole party. Everyone was sufficiently loosened up, probably a bit too loosened up to be honest. We were all doing what we did, when we heard what sounded like somebody screaming from a closed room off the hallway. It was incoherent at first, but after a few minutes of it, I walked over to hit the pause button on the stereo to pause the music, and see what the hell was going on. As soon as I paused the music, the door swung open, and out came Robin. He looked seriously mad. Like, he had an absolute scowl on his face, looking like he was about to beat the hell out of somebody. We all kind of backed off from him as he walked out of the hallways and into the main area, mostly because I think that none of us wanted to be the person he took his anger out on. He then stopped in the center of the living room, all of us surrounding him, and staring at him, of course. And then he asked, "Who the hell turned the music off?" The whole crowd kind of looked around, but slowly fell off to the sides, pushing me towards the middle, basically singling me out. I just kind of shyly said, "Oh, I did. We heard you yelling and we were wanting to make sure you were okay, man." I finished this sentence, and as soon as the last words came out of my mouth, I saw Robin lift his hand toward me, and I was met with the business end of a handgun. I could feel my heart speeding up. The people in the room started screaming and trying to push back, but no one really did anything to help the situation. Not that I would expect anyone to jump in front of a gun for me. I slightly lifted my hands and I tried to tell him that I was sorry about turning the music off, that I didn't want any trouble, and that if he wanted, I would just leave the party and not come back. I was basically just trying to plead for my life at that point, because this guy that I didn't really know very well was about to shoot me. After several more seconds of silence and me feeling like I was about to puke, he shifted his arm and he put the gun up to his own head. Then he just gave us this really messed up smile and creepy laugh. It was almost cartoonish how creepy it was, like something the Joker would do. The whole room just sat still and watched as this guy laughed and pulled the trigger. And I think there was a huge collective sigh of relief when nothing happened. He pulled that trigger with the gun against his own head, and as soon as it was clear that the gun was not loaded, he started laughing like an absolute psycho. Obviously, this was a huge party killer. We were all speechless and freaking out, and I was trying to figure out how the situation was supposed to be funny. Obviously, he thought it was the most hilarious thing to ever happen. And honestly, I think the whole room was ready to beat the hell out of this guy, while he was just howling about how he got all of us, and how we really thought he was going to do it. Yeah, dude, you had a gun. And rule 1 when it comes to firearms is to assume it is always loaded, and that the person holding it intends to use it. Not to mention, you were acting weird and angry the whole night, and everyone in the room was a bit tipsy when you decided to put it to your head and pull the trigger. Without even saying a word, everyone pretty much just started filing out of the house, myself and my friend group included. We were just done with that party. The whole time while we were exiting, he was just laughing and asking why we were all leaving, calling us lame, saying that we needed to learn to take a joke. In my opinion, pretending to commit suicide is not a joke. Threatening somebody else with a gun, loaded or not, is not a joke. Nothing that he did was funny, and I was seriously scared for my life. Like I mentioned, this was actually one of the last parties that I went to. Most of us pulled away from the party scene and just started doing hangout nights, where a few of us would meet up and do whatever. But there weren't any more big parties for that year. So, I guess I should just say thanks to Robin for getting me away from the party scene, because he definitely did that. I hope that he and I never meet again, because I will probably kick his ass if we do. And yes, I am still very much holding on to this grudge.